On the 15th of February 1976, 12-year-old Mark Stebbins was hanging out at the American Legion Hall in Ferndale. There was a pool tournament on, and his mum was working as a barmaid.
But Mark was getting bored, and he asked his mum if he could please just go home because he wanted to watch the afternoon TV special 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Mark was obsessed with war films, and this was the 70s. If he didn't get home in time to watch it, he wasn't watching it. Eventually, Mark's mum Ruth relented. After all, their house, 429 Saratoga Street, was just a mile away, and it was basically a straight line. But later that afternoon, when his brother got home, Mark wasn't there. By the time Ruth finished work, Mark was still nowhere to be seen, so she called the police. Now, at first, the police, in their classic 70s way, did not take the case of the missing boy very seriously, telling the family to call again in 24 hours if he still hadn't shown up. And so, a day later, with still no word from Mark, the police asked for a picture of the 12-year-old to circulate. Tragically, and this bit of the story just made me feel really sad, Ruth hadn't been able to afford Mark's school photos for the past few years, so she actually didn't have any pictures of her son. So all the police could do was bring in a sketch artist.
That is sad. 4 days later, at around 10:30 in the morning, an office worker arrived at New Orleans Plaza in Southfield, Michigan, to pop into a pharmacy. But in the car park, he spotted something. It looked like someone had dumped a mannequin near the bins. It was not. I think we've had one case where it has been.
When is it ever a mannequin? And I would love to know the stats on the number of people that come across discarded mannequins versus the number of people who come across dead bodies every single year.
Wow, yeah. I'm sure we did one recently where it was actually a mannequin.
Oh, I can believe there was one.
It was not a mannequin. It was the body of 12-year-old Mark Stebbins. And an autopsy soon revealed the horrors that he had endured. There were rope burns on Mark's wrists, throat and ankles, and he had a serious circular wound to the back of his head. This hadn't killed him, however. In fact, the gash had started to heal. Mark had actually died of suffocation.
It was theorised that the head injury may have been caused by the lock on a car door being slammed down onto him, perhaps during the initial abduction, or that it could have been caused by some form of blunt force trauma, like the butt of a shotgun. What was really interesting, though, was that Mark was still wearing the same clothes that he'd had on when he vanished, but there was absolutely no blood on him or on the clothes. How had he sustained such an injury and come out clean? As it turned out, Mark's clothes had been freshly washed, and so had his body. Even his nails had been scrubbed and trimmed.
Horrifically, the autopsy also revealed that Mark had been repeatedly sexually assaulted, including with a foreign object. How long he'd been held for was less clear. As we said, the wound to his head had started to scab over, so he'd been kept alive long enough for that to happen. And rigor mortis seemed to indicate that he had died between 12 to 36 hours before he was found. A pretty big window.
It is a big window because he was only missing for 4 days. They have no idea.
The police were also able to narrow down the window of the body dump significantly because another person had walked their dog through the same car park at 9:30 a.m. that same morning and he had not seen Mark's body. So, Mark was dumped probably less than an hour before he was discovered.
Despite finding the body so quickly, the crime scene soon became an absolute Argos catalogue of errors because the police made quite a few mistakes. Firstly, they used a dirty blanket to cover Mark's body at the scene, immediately contaminating any potential evidence. Back then, DNA testing wasn't even a sparkle in someone's eye, but fibres, hairs, fingerprints, they could work with all of those, and there was so much that they potentially messed up immediately.
The police also moved Mark to the police station themselves and bagged up his clothes instead of waiting for the medical examiner. There will be plenty of time later on for speculation as to cover-ups and conspiracies, but here the police were just not used to dealing with homicides and they were trying to act fast rather than follow proper procedure. And I can understand, it's not the right thing to do, but I can understand the feeling of like, we've got to get this dead child out of public sight.
And Oakland County was such a safe place. They really did not have homicides, let alone a 12-year-old body turning up. I am going to go on to contradict that later because there's a lot of dead kids that happen within this year. But up until that point, it had been a very safe place. The police make these mistakes. And the reason I do think that they are trying is that they even bring in a psychologist, Dr. Danto. It was about 5 years before this that the FBI's behavioral analysis unit had been set up in Quantico, so no doubt that kind of like criminal minds aspect to crime fighting would have been all the rage. So I do think they are trying everything. They just don't really know what they're doing. The police followed Dr. Danto's advice and actually planted a mannequin at the scene to wait and see if the killer came back. But no such luck.
As the snow melted away and winter turned to spring, the police had made basically no progress, and the trail leading to Mark Stebbins' killer went cold. Speculation at the time was that this was most likely the work of some transient criminal passing through the county. They love that one. No one could believe that the killer could have been from Oakland itself, living amongst them. And who can blame them? Crime rates in Oakland County were some of the lowest in the entire country, and they still are.
But 10 months later, another case would smash any hope that this had been a one-off nightmare.